Hi team, welcome to 15.5. My name is Carly Smith. I'll be walking you through the 15.5 platform today as Seth, an employee here at Curaleaf. He is both an employee and a manager, so we'll cover both perspectives today. First, we'll touch on the check-ins. Check-ins will be submitted at the end of each week for our salary employees, and then every month for our hourly employees. The visibility of the check-in is over on the bottom right-hand corner where you see who your reviewer is. This will probably be your immediate manager. They'll review your check-in every week or every month, depending upon your frequency. If you're curious about who else can see your check-in, go ahead and go to that question down below, who can view my check-in? You can even just hover over that and it will surface who else has insight into your responses that you leave public up the reporting line. If you make something private, it would just be visible to your immediate reviewer in 15.5. By default, the visibility is up the reporting line. So your manager, your manager's manager, and so on and so forth will have access into your results. The reason why we do this is to hope that we can actually share insights prior to larger issues occurring and also share wins that are going on. What are the things that we should be celebrating as a team, not just individually? How can we broaden that positivity ratio throughout the organization? The first question that we ask is, how did you feel at work this week? On a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being awful, 5 being amazing. Go ahead and write what you felt that week was. There's no wrong answer here. We really just want to surface how we actually felt. Maybe you find a 3 is your baseline. You typically always say a 3. That's great. Maybe a 2 is how this week was because it wasn't as productive or you weren't able to get the things done that you wanted to. That's okay. But once you find your baseline, you'll understand and kind of gravitate towards that, unless maybe it was a stellar week and it was outstanding, or maybe there was a road bump and it was a little bit of a rocky week. You can always add context. Maybe you want to say why it was a stellar week or why maybe it wasn't that great of a week. You can always add little smiley faces throughout the 15.5 platform, which will allow you to put in an emoji. And then additionally, there will be a lock icon throughout the platform, which will allow you to do something where you can make something visible just to your media manager. The next section is for goals. So here, if you have a goal that you currently are owning, you'll state whether it's on track, behind, or at risk. I'll go into a little bit later how to actually create a goal in 15.5. In your check-in, you'll say again, whether it's on track, behind, or at risk. You can also update the KPI. So what are the areas of which you're going to measure the impact of that objective? And you can see the progress of completion will also change. We really want to keep this top of mind. So we're going to keep it in the forefront of our check-ins every time we submit a check-in. Next, we have our priorities. So week over week or month over month, you'll enter in a few priorities for yourself. This is not meant to be an exhaustive to-do list. This is really just what are those high-level items that you're hoping to move forward over the next week. You can also align your priorities, your short-term goals, to a longer-term goal, whether it's an objective or a goal that might be maybe 6 months or maybe 3 months. If you weren't able to accomplish something, you can copy it over to the following week. But if you do accomplish something, go ahead and mark it as completed. If you need to add comments with little notes or context, you can do that as well. Again, this is not meant to be an exhaustive list of all the things you want to do next week, but really just the high-level items you want to move forward. Our next section will be for questions. So this is really the heart of 15.5. Week over week, we'll ask what your wins were this week and what your challenges were. We want to highlight those things that we should celebrate. We also want to share what are the things that are roadblocks for you? How can we help remove those for you? You may not have the answer to how, but it's good to at least just surface that with your manager. You might not be the only one who's actually also struggling with that or has that roadblock in their way. You can @mention colleagues throughout your check-in. As you can see, I've @mentioned my colleague Jane here. @mentioning something someone does not give them full visibility into your check-in. It just lets them see that one comment to the answer that you've added them in. Like we saw before, we can add emojis. We can lock this down to be visible just to my immediate manager, or you can use a paperclip icon to add an attachment if that's the best way to answer a question. And lastly, this new icon over on the far right will allow you to add this answer to your one-on-one with your manager. So even before you submit your check-in, you can add items as talking points to your one-on-one from your check-in. You may find some questions might be a rating scale, maybe yes/no questions. They may rotate about 1 or 2 questions each week, but typically we'll always have the wins and challenges. It'll be very helpful to have all of these when it comes time for our review cycle. The last section in your check-in is for high fives. So the high fives are an area to give your colleagues recognition. What is the appreciation that we can share with them? How can we acknowledge their help or support in certain areas? By default, this section is actually visible to the rest of the organization. So the high fives will be shared company-wide. If you want to make a high five private just to one person who you're giving that high five to, you can toggle this from public over to private. But you can only give private high fives just to one person at a time. Right now, if you go ahead and use that hashtag, you'll actually see all the Curaleaf core values posted. So as soon as you use the hashtag icon, you can then see each core value, which will really allow you to tie the recognition that you're sharing to that colleague to one of the core values that we have. What is the core value that's being most exemplified in this recognition that I'm sharing with my colleague? You can high five multiple people or a group, but this is the last section of your check-in. So in review, we have your pulse. How did you feel at work this week on a scale of 1 to 5? If you have a goal that you've entered in, you could say whether it's on track, behind, or at risk, and even update and enter in those key KPIs, how you've made progress on those, entering in a few priorities, answering the different questions around your wins and challenges and any other questions that are asked, and then giving a high five, really recognizing your peers. By default, it will save as a draft, so there's no need to go and press a save button or anything like that. But by end of day Friday, I would recommend going ahead and just pressing submit. You can do this from your mobile phone. You can also do this from the desktop version. Maybe you want to start on your phone and finish on the computer. That's fine as well. Whatever works for you. There's a few things that you can do once you've submitted your check-in. You can scroll through and add things to your one-on-one agenda with your manager. Maybe you completed something, but you want to surface that with your manager. You can add that in. Or you can add comments. I typically come down to my wins and challenges section actually, and I add these things to my wins and challenges. This is private just to me. So when it comes time for review, I don't have to scratch my head and think, what happened over the last 6 months? I actually have a quick insight into all the things that I flagged as a win or a challenge to help surface that in my review. That's it. So your check-in should not take you more than 15 minutes. It should be really lightweight. You can complete this on your mobile phone as well. Next, I want to touch on high fives briefly. We shared how you could do that within your check-in, but you can also give high fives from the high five feed here. So on the app as well. From here, you can just simply mention that colleague and then type out their name. And then again, the high five, what actual recognition you have for them. The best formula for creating a high five is actually outlining the behavior and then the impact that it had. It's much more likely that we will see that behavior repeat itself if we share the impact that it had on us. So I mentioned that colleague, outline the behavior, outline the impact, and then hashtag one of the core values that was most exemplified in that behavior. You can scroll through and add on to recognition already being shared, either giving an emoji reaction or simply adding another comment in order to add on to what's already being shared. One thing to note here is that all high fives from the high five feed will be public. So if you do want to give private recognition just to that one person, just go ahead and put that in your check-in and save it, and it will auto save as that draft for the end of the week or the end of the month, depending upon your frequency. Next, we'll jump into one-on-ones. Within one-on-ones, you'll be able to have one-on-ones with anyone at Curaleaf. Depending upon your role, the cadence might change, or rather depending upon your reporting lines, the cadence may change. But when you're in one-on-ones, you can see that we can both add talking points, both me and the colleague that I'm meeting with. If it's maybe coming from a check-in, I can see that it's coming from that because it says show answer over here. I can also see who added it, when did they add it. I can make things repeat every time that we meet. Maybe there's a standing talking point. We want it to come up every time we meet. I can keep it as a reoccurring. I can lock them down to make them private just to myself when I create them. I can also use bullet points or a hyperlink and add additional attachments to my talking points. Over here on the far right is a little comment. So this allows me to comment onto the ones that maybe they've added or maybe adding context onto mine. But we don't want to replace the ability to actually schedule these and meet via Outlook and Teams. So you will still schedule your meetings through Outlook. You'll still meet via Teams, or if you could in person. But from 15.5, we actually really just need to put in our talking points and actually use it as our agenda. So you'll still meet and schedule through Outlooks and Team, but you'll use 15.5 as the agenda and notes together. So when you're actually meeting together, go ahead and check off the talking points that you actually accomplished. We did cover these different items, or maybe we didn't, and so we left this one unchecked. It will just simply roll over to our next one-on-one that we have together. The next section is for action items. Action items can be assigned to either yourself or the other person you're meeting with. So this is that follow-up. What are the next steps that we have after we met? I can assign this by clicking on that profile photo or first and last initials if we have those here, and then selecting the other person who I'm meeting with to assign it to them. Shared notes, as well as your action items and talking points, will all update in real time as you hold your one-on-one. So maybe you are meeting via Teams. If you're adding notes and the other person you're meeting with is adding notes, you'll see those update in real time here. The last area is for private notes. These will be shared. These will not be shared, rather. These will not be shared, but everything else above, everything that does update in real time, will be shared in the summary email after the one-on-one has ended. So shared notes, action items, and talking points all update in real time and will be sent in the summary email after the one-on-one has taken place. Private notes are private just to you. In the top right-hand corner, as I shared, we will be booking our one-on-ones if we don't currently have those scheduled through the Outlook platform. If you do want to add the link right here to this one-on-one agenda, just click copy link in the top right-hand corner and then copy this invitation. It will include a link that will simply put into your description of that recurring Outlook meeting invitation. So every time you go to that meeting to launch Teams, you will then be able to open up 15.5 and see that current one-on-one with that employee. Once you click end, you'll have confirmation of when that day was. So again, you don't have to schedule it through 15.5. You can use Outlook. And then once you've ended your one-on-one, no further edits can be made. I can go back to the past one-on-ones I've had with Leah in the top left-hand corner and see all of our past one-on-ones. I can also click on our current draft and see, because of the ones that were reoccurring and the ones I did not check off last week, it has already rolled over and I already have a draft created for our next one-on-one. So when you first log in, you'll see a similar view over here. No need to schedule, just simply copy the link, copy this, and put this in the meeting description of your Outlook calendar. Next, we'll touch on goals. Here we have goals where you can put these in and see these within your hierarchy. So your manager can look into yours and your direct reports and so on and so forth if you use that certain visibility setting. So within create a new goal in the top right-hand corner, you'll first enter in, what is that goal? What are you hoping to achieve? What are you working towards? If you were entering in a past goal, you can enter that in here. You'll always enter in who the owner is. For the most part, that will be yourself, but you can always, as managers, you can add goals for your direct reports if necessary. From who is this goal for, this is actually the tier. So is this maybe a self-development goal? Am I looking to meditate twice a week or learn certain leadership skills like public speaking? It could be individual, which relates to my work here at Curaleaf. It could be specifically for a group. Maybe I have a department-wide or team-wide objective and goal that I want to work towards. I could select which department I'm in and add that there. And then certain people could create them for the whole company. Next, if you are aligning it to maybe your manager's goal, maybe you have a supervisor who owns a department-wide goal and you need to align to theirs, you can search for that. And then next we have the KPI. So what are the areas that we're going to measure the success of this? How do I know that this has actually been achieved? If it's around maybe learning how to be better at public speaking, maybe it's taking a course, maybe it's watching a couple videos and doing a couple practice presentations. So maybe I want to hit a couple presentations. Maybe I want to do 4 different presentations. I can change my target from from 100 to 4. And also I can make another KPI around actually finishing a course. Maybe I have a course I want to complete and I'll leave it at a percentage of completion so that I can reach that 100%. So I want to present 4 times, testing it out. And then also finish the course. If this is a department-wide or team-wide goal, you could actually change who the owners are of your KPIs and have us assigned to the different colleagues on that team. So what are the ownership levels of each KPI that I'm entering in? It is intended to be collaborative if it is maybe something that's not self-development. And this right-hand corner over here, we do have a little more guidance. The guidance that we have on goal setting is actually based off of OKR methodology. And so we will have a little bit of a learn more here, and we'll take you to objectives. But from here, we do want to coach that we should be setting KPIs that are quantifiable. So we have those different options of percentage of completion, a monetary amount, or a numerical amount. If you do click on these last three dots, there's an option to change it to completed versus not completed. But I'll say based off experience, it's best to have it as a percentage of completion if you're itching towards that completed versus not completed. The last two sections are for the duration and the privacy settings. So by default, it will set to be for this quarter. I understand that a lot of us are going to be putting in objectives from this past quarter. Just go ahead and change that start date. And then you would set the end date of today. And then when you go to your check-in this Friday, you can just simply say, I've updated my KPIs, shown you what different areas I've completed, and then close that objective. So if it was from the past month, or maybe it was from the past 6 months, just go ahead and change that. You can extend the duration of that. Let's say it started in January and it is going until July, but technically it will end on today because we can't go backwards. Then we'll put in the visibility setting. So by default, you have 15.5 permissions selected. This is those check-in visibilities of your manager can see this, your manager's manager, and so on and so forth. And then the other option is for specific people. So just my immediate manager and myself, and I can add other colleagues if I'd like. Once you create your goal, you'll have your objective details page. But again, I recommend going back to your check-in, entering in the updates of the KPIs that you have hit with that past objective, if you are entering in a past objective, the past goal that you worked on. And then from here, you can actually close and view that goal. So I'll actually jump into Teams check-ins now. So we've covered check-ins as an employee, we've covered one-on-ones, we've covered high fives and goals. Now we're going to go into the Teams check-in. This is actually what to expect as a manager or from your manager when reviewing your check-in. So check-ins are actually going to be reviewed within about 5 minutes. Everyone will submit their check-in within about 15 minutes, and managers within about 2 business days should review the check-in. So there are different areas to be reminded of that: my homepage, notifications, email, and then also from my Teams check-in. So from here, I can click on the one to start reviewing. It actually looks very similar to how I review my own check-in. I can scroll through and add comments. Maybe I want to add a follow-up question or simply add this to our one-on-one agenda. I can do so from those 3 dots over to the far right. I can also scroll through and see the progress they're making on their goal. They were previously behind, they're now on track. It's great to see the progress they're making. And they also pulled it into our one-on-one, so it's great to see. I may add a follow-up comment if I want to have more information prior to our one-on-one. For priorities, maybe the ones that were completed, there was a deliverable. You want to actually see what came out of that. You can add a follow-up comment. If there's maybe ones that are currently for this following week or the current week that you're at, you may want to redirect efforts. Maybe someone is looking to work on something that's no longer a priority for the company. It'd be important for us to redirect that energy elsewhere. So you can say, no longer, top priority for us. Let's put this to the back burner and add something else that they need to maybe focus their efforts towards next. Or maybe there's an option for collaboration. You can simply just @mention other colleagues as well. Maybe you want to @mention another peer in or someone else who's worked on something similar in the past to help them collaborate on something. Maybe they've done it previously. They can just simply be @mentioned in. That person would not be granted full visibility into the entire check-in, just that one area that you've @mentioned them into. For the questions, just like I did for myself, I typically come here and add things to wins and challenges for my direct reports. There's another area where you can pass it up. This would actually pass up that answer to your immediate reviewer in 15.5 in your next check-in. So it won't actually surface to them until 1 week from now when your check-in is being submitted. So, or a month, depending upon your frequency if you're a reviewer. But from the past step, I just simply would add a comment and @mention my manager and let them know, hey, I'm sharing this with you because it's something I want to highlight. Maybe it is around a challenge that all of my direct reports are facing, and it's a common theme. We should maybe address it at a team-wide meeting versus just my immediate direct reports. The other area, again, is adding to your one-on-one agenda and adding to wins and challenges, which is just private to you. So as a manager, adding to wins and challenges from reviewing your direct reports will allow you to have a reduced recency bias when it comes time for a review cycle. We understand many of you have multiple direct reports. It can be hard to keep track of all the things. So instead of having a ton of sticky notes or notebooks or just actual notes on your computer, we have the ability to have all of our wins and challenges just kept for ourselves and only visible to you, so that when you go to review that employee at the time of a review cycle in 15.5, you won't have to scratch your head and think what happened recently or over the last 6 months, and rather, what's that greater picture? What's the holistic view of that employee? The last section will be for high fives. Here you can see the high fives that they've been receiving over the last week. You can also see the ones that they've reviewed or rather given over the last week. It's great to see this because it's good to see the impact that your employees are making, not just on their immediate peers in their team, but also on the company as a whole. So you can add on to those with those emojis or comments, and then also give a high five as well. The very last section is an optional section to help them grow, not required. However, if you want to give them feedback more frequently, maybe your one-on-one isn't for a few weeks, or you simply just want to give the feedback directly in here, you can do that as well. So our recommendation is spend about 5 minutes reading through that check-in. You can like and comment 3 to 5 different areas of the check-in, and then actually mark it as reviewed. This button will stay with you as you scroll throughout the entire page. Marking it as reviewed will indicate to your direct report that there's no further edits to be made, that you've added whatever you wanted to add to the one-on-one, and they can move forward. I'm going to hit next on our home page. So from home, there is an About tab that is a great resource for answering certain questions to help kind of kickstart the feedback loop. So how do you actually want to receive feedback? Is it face-to-face? Is it written? It's really important to go here and start filling out your answers. One thing to note is the visibility here by default is company-wide, but if you want to make something private, again, just it would be visible to your immediate manager here. The reason why we make this company-wide is because it's great to see across different teams and whoever you may not necessarily work with next door, but may be a part of the organization, how they prefer to work, what kind of stuff energizes them, what makes them feel alive at work, and then also what are their top strengths or favorite hobbies. It may be the same as you. My favorite thing is around the section for preferences, just to make sure that the people who I work with actually know how I like to receive feedback versus the kind that maybe is their standard. Maybe they're typically used to giving written feedback and I prefer more of a conversation. So great for them to see that here. The best self kickoff as managers will be great too, because it will pull in your answers as well as employees' answers. So when you meet in a one-on-one, maybe it's your first one-on-one, you're not used to having those yet, you will actually have a great conversation starter to bring in all these questions together and have that dialogue. Highlights is the first tab. It's unique to you. You can add talking points in bulk from here to your direct reports check-ins. You can see any action items, any goals you're currently working on. I had some follow-up from a one-on-one that I had previously, and I had previously a reminder here to review my direct reports check-in. Career vision is a great place to actually just confirm what you're got going on here, what your trajectory is, where do you want to work towards. And then wins and challenges is that last tab that I really want to highlight here because I've talked about it a couple times. From here, you can add new notes. So you don't have to just pull in things that are coming from your check-in. This wins and challenges tab is for yourself because you're on your profile page. Again, visible just to you. No one else will have access to this. Company directory in the top right-hand corner will bring you to a list of all employees in the organization. If you're a manager, you might want to filter by and find your direct reports, but I could actually go to just one of my direct reports in here, and I could add wins and challenges to my profile here for them. So they have their About tab listed with all of their preferences and things like that, but the wins and challenges that I have flagged for them are on their profile page here. I can add new notes as well if I'd like. The last thing I want to touch on is your settings in the top right-hand corner, and then go into my settings. Notifications are already set company-wide, but if you need to make certain changes, you can do so from here. These are based off of your usage of 15.5, so they are very beneficial, but you may find what works best for you. Just make sure you save at the bottom of the page. The last thing I want to leave off with is in the settings in the top right-hand corner, we have the button for our Help Center. There's a variety of resources in here that will help you in using 15.5, both as an employee, but also as a manager. So feel free to search for items in here and let us know how we can help. I'm looking forward to seeing your success with 15.5.